What is going on, everybody? I am back. Obviously, nobody titled the video. We're here to talk about the Geno Smith deal. I am rocking the Geno Smith jersey for the video, of course. I didn't make a video yesterday for a couple reasons. One, my whole family's sick, so couldn't do it. And number two, I wanted to wait till a little bit more details of the contract came out. I didn't need to break the news. You all saw the deal happen. But obviously, initially, we saw it as a 3-year, $105 million deal for Geno Smith. Turns out it's closer to more of a 3-year, $75 million deal. It's up to $40 million in incentives, so it could go up to 3 years, $105 million. But essentially, the base of it is more of a 3-year, $75 million deal. And that's obviously a huge difference because a lot of the talk was what Geno would get per year. And most people thought there's no way it was going to be under 30. I was one of those people. I thought it'd be in the 30 to 35 range. Obviously, wasn't sure because Geno's in a different mold. He's kind of going off of 1 year of this as opposed to some guys who have done it for multiple years. So I thought he might get a little bit less per season because of that. But it turns out he actually does. Now, like I said, there's a lot of incentives in there, so there's ways he can get that up. But that's good. If he's hitting those incentives, you're probably winning football games, in which case you're fine paying him a little bit more money. Just real quick, my thoughts on the deal is I'm 100% in support of it. If you watch my previous videos, I've mentioned that this is the route I wanted to go, was to re-sign Geno Smith and then look at adding talent into the draft. I swear, every video I do, I have my kids yelling somewhere in the background. But this was the route I wanted to go. My biggest concern with Geno was him maybe getting a bigger multi-year deal, something like 5, 6, 7 years. And I didn't want to necessarily do that. I was a little nervous about committing that many years to Geno Smith and then saying, hey, for our next 5 years, Geno's our guy. Doing it as a 3-year deal, and if you look at it, it almost comes out to like a 2-year, $50 million deal. I think they have some out clauses. I know Andrew Brandt was talking about that in a tweet. He said essentially comes out like a 2-year, $50 million deal. This is exactly, if you guys watched my previous videos, what I talked about wanting. Something like a 3-year deal where the team can get out of it after 2. So if Geno regresses and you get more of the jet Geno Smith, it's easy to move on and get back into the quarterback mix. Whereas if you go 5, 6, 7 years, Geno's your guy. Like, there's no other option to go. You've got to roll with Geno for at least 4 or 5 of those years. This is a great deal for both sides. It's great for Geno that he got paid. I mean, he's one of the stories I think you have to be happy for, with everything. And then he kind of just, I don't want to say comes out of nowhere last year, but essentially does and ends up being, a Pro Bowl level quarterback. And then he gets paid. So it's really cool for him. And I think it's a good deal for the Seahawks. It wraps up a good quarterback for at least a couple more years, but it still gives them flexibility and leverage to make moves and look at quarterbacks still in the draft. If Seattle would have let Geno Smith walk, and I know some people were okay with that, I was not. I wouldn't say I was okay with it. I understood why some people might want that to happen, but the problem, if you let Geno Smith walk, you are now in quarterback drafting mode. Like, there is no other option for you but to almost take a quarterback at 5. And that's assuming the quarterback's going to be there. Now, Seattle would have been sticking at number 3. Let's say Denver lost that last week of the season. Seattle had the number 3 pick in the draft. You might have your pick of the litter a little bit more. They may not. The big 3, consider the big 4 are Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Richardson from Florida, and then Will Levis are your big 4 quarterbacks. If you stick at 5, one of them will probably be there because I don't think Arizona's going to go quarterback, but it may not be the one you want. It may be Will Levis is the only one left. And if Levis isn't your guy, but then you're maybe stuck with that. Or you've got to give Drew Lock a 1-year deal and go with that. So now Seattle has a quarterback that played well last year, locked up, and they can still look at quarterback. Now, do I think they go quarterback at 5? I don't. I don't really like that strategy either. I just think it gives you options maybe later in the draft. I'm okay with a quarterback at 20 if one falls, or you can move back up to 15, 16. Let's say for some reason Richardson's slipping. People just didn't like his tape. They love his measurables, but the tape didn't look good, and he's sitting there at 14. You want to move back up? I'm okay with that after taking someone at 5 or whatever you end up doing. Or maybe there's someone in the second, third, later rounds. Maybe you really like Stetson Bennett. and he's there in the later rounds, and you can go that route. I'm still for this team drafting a quarterback. I just don't think doing it number 5 is the best spend of your resources now. And rookie quarterbacks aren't as cheap as they used to be either. I think you look at the last quarterback picked at number 5 was Tua, and Tua was sitting there. I think his rookie salary was like $5 million. Now, that's certainly cheaper than like what Geno's going to be making, but it's not like 300. It's not like the league minimum. You're still paying these guys a decent salary. So to have 2 of those guys on the roster, I don't think makes a ton of sense. Now, Seattle really loves a prospect, or if one falls, like they love C.J. Stroud maybe, and he drops there, maybe you think about it. But I think for the most part, this does take Seattle out of the quarterback race at 5. They're going to still say they're in it. So if you go, oh no, Pete and John, you guys come on and say, oh, Pete and John still said they're involved for a quarterback. Of course they are. They're not going to say they're not. They want teams to trade up with their pick. You never want to let people know what your hand is. So they're still going to talk about being interested in quarterbacks. And I don't think they're 100% disinterested, but I don't see them going quarterback at 5. But yeah, I think this is a really good deal for the Seattle Seahawks. I'm 100% in favor of it. Like I said, my biggest concern was years with Geno. While I love the story, I was a little nervous because I think you look at his first half of the season was really good. He was in the MVP discussion. His second half of the year, he was more solid. Like, he wasn't amazing. He wasn't bad, but he's probably like, if you had to rank all 32 quarterbacks, he would have been like 16, 15 with his second half of the season. But I think if you look at his salary, I think he's somewhere in like the 13 to 16 range in terms of quarterbacks and what they make. I think that's totally fair. I think that's about where Geno slots in. I think he is definitely a starting quarterback in this league. I think even people that aren't as big on him would say he at least showed that he is a starting quarterback in this league, in the NFL. And you bring him back, he had good chemistry. He knows the system now under Shane Waldron. So another year for him in there. He's a good veteran presence now. You know what I mean? So I think it's a really good deal to have him back. And, if this defense can improve, and maybe you can improve, you're going to have to look to improve the center position because Austin Blythe retired. You can get a little bit better there and maybe add another receiver weapon, whether it's free agency or the draft. Geno maybe can take another. Normally quarterbacks at 33 don't take a step forward, but maybe he can keep some of that first half play up throughout the season. And the defense getting better would go a long way to that too. This team not having to score 30, 40 points a week to win some football games. So I think this team is definitely capable of taking the next step with Geno Smith. And if Geno isn't good, and let's say kind of bombs out, you can get out of this contract after 2 years. Now, I don't know all the ins and outs of the deal. NFL contracts are not like baseball contracts. They are very complicated. There's a lot to go into it. Just look at yesterday. Yesterday, all the talk was 3 years, 105, $52 million for the first year. But it turns out it was $52 million was what he could get in the first calendar year, not in the first season of football, in the first calendar year. And it wasn't 3 years, 105. It could be up to 105. It's really a 3-year, $75 million deal on its basis. Yes, there's incentives, but those incentives are probably only going to kick in if he's doing really well, in which case, sure, then he is worth, the 3 years, 105. I actually wasn't even against 3 years, 105. I'm not against, him having a significant cap hit. I was okay with $35 million a year, and 105 is about 34, 35. I was okay with that, actually. My concern, like I said, was the years. I didn't want them to get into 6-7 years with Geno, and then, God forbid, he does regress a little bit, which is possible. Like I said, his second half was not as good as his first half. There's a reason Geno Smith has been on benches for a few years. So if he regresses, you would have been kind of stuck. At least, you're never stuck. You can always move on, but then there's dead cap money. You're paying Geno still, and it could have been a train wreck. Now you're in a perfect sweet spot here where going into next year who your starting quarterback is. You can still draft one. You can develop under Geno. And then if Geno struggles next year, you can look to replace him. You could release him after the 1 year if he struggles, or, you can keep him there and have a competition with another guy and then get out of the deal after 2 years. So totally fine with this deal. I'm hard-pressed to see a Seahawks fan that's not okay with this. And again, it just saves you from going into the draft absolutely having to take a quarterback. If you don't re-sign Geno, you're going QB, or you're signing another veteran. Derek Carr goes to New Orleans on a deal. Do you want Derek Carr? I mean, fine, but you might as well go with Geno, who's been in the system at that point. and knows this offense in and out. So now you can go into the draft with everything open to you. And if you're someone that was in favor, you wanted the quarterback at 5, I would say that can still happen. It's not my preference, and I don't think it's what they'll do, but that is still 100% on the table for you. And just be careful, because the 5th pick, you're going to have the Bears likely trade. You're going to have the Texans and Colts take quarterbacks, and you could have a team like Carolina, Atlanta, maybe Detroit. You've got some teams that can slide in there and that could take a quarterback above you, and you're left. Like I said, you've got the big 4, which seems to be separating themselves from the pack with Young, Stroud, Richardson, and Will Levis. And you might be stuck with the 4th guy on there that you don't even like. The Seahawks may love C.J. Stroud, and I'm just using Stroud as an example here. They may absolutely be in love with him. They may think he's Patrick Mahomes 2.0. But there's no guarantee they're going to get him. They can't go into the draft and throw all their chips in the C.J. Stroud basket because they don't know if they're going to get him. If they love Stroud and he's there at 5, take him. Fine. I'm okay with that. Like I said, it's not my preference, but fine. If you think this is Patrick Mahomes, then you can still take him. And him and Geno can duke it out for the job. And, Geno probably wins it, but then you've got a contingency plan in place. That's fine. You can do that. But now that's open to you. Whereas if you don't re-sign Geno, you're either looking at one of these veterans, you're either stuck, let's say those guys are all gone. Will Levis, maybe you like Will, maybe you don't, but maybe you're just on him. Now you got Will Levis. You probably bring back a Drew Lock, and now you're looking at Will Levis and Drew Lock having to duke it out, and you better hope Will Levis is your guy because that rookie clock is starting, and you've still got a roster that truthfully does need a lot of work still. We saw this Seahawks team against San Francisco in the playoffs. They were not ready to compete with San Francisco in the trenches. Does Seattle have some talent? Absolutely, they do. This rookie class was amazing. You've got a really good offensive, I think, base in place with Metcalf, Lockett, some good tight ends, Fant, Parkinson, Disley, the 2 rookie tackles, Lucas and Cross. I like Damian Lewis. I think Phil Haynes is probably going to end up being your starting right guard. I think Gabe Jackson will be released. And hopefully a rookie center, some good rookie centers. So hopefully someone there. And maybe adding another wide receiver in the draft as well. You've got a great offensive base here. The defense needs a lot of work. It does. So you've still got to find ways to address this. Now, you can do that multiple ways. You can go secondary, then build up to the D-line, or you can build out from the D-line to the secondary, whatever they decide to do. But this defense still needs a lot of work. And you get tied to all these quarterbacks, you're still a team that likely isn't ready to compete until you get that defense going. So basically, this is just going to allow the Seahawks have so much more options during the draft and get some other teams guessing too, because they could still go quarterback. They could go here. So no one really knows what Seattle's going to do now. And that's how Pete Carroll and John Schneider like it. They like to go into the draft keeping teams guessing. So I think it's a really good deal for the Seahawks. I think it's a really good deal for Geno. Happy for him, just on a human being level, taking away my fandom. I'm very happy for Geno that he got that payday, well earned. I'm excited that I'm excited my jersey is not just a one-year thing, and I can still rock it next year, and I'm excited for Geno to have one more year. I think it was worth it. I think you've got to get Geno one more year here to see, was that fluky last year? Was that something to build on? Let's see. I would hate to see Geno walk and go tear it up other places and regret not bringing him back. And like I said, on a 3-year deal, which essentially can be a 2-year deal, you can't go wrong with this. You really can't. So nothing to be upset about if you're a Seahawks fan. I think you should be very happy. And now we can start getting into some mock drafts a little bit more. Hopefully this week I'll have a mock draft up. I'm just going to do it on the PFF site and let it go through, and I'll control the Seahawks, and we'll see what we can get for the team. I'm going to wait a little bit because I've been looking at some of the PFF mocks that people do, and they've still got Jalen Carter going really early, and I think Jalen Carter's stock is dropping a little bit. So I'm hoping that their kind of internal servers catch up with that a little bit, because I think after everything that's happened, Jalen Carter's stock has dropped. So, and even maybe Bryce Young a little bit too, whereas Richardson and Stroud have gone up. So we'll see. I'm hoping those kind of, their AI catches up with that a little bit before I do some mocks. As always, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, whatever you need to do for more Seahawks and NFL news. And I will see you guys all next time. Have a great week. Peace.